Okay, so marriage rates, right? They're hitting like record lows.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
It's a huge drop since the 1960s.
Huge.
And everyone's wondering, like, why aren't guys proposing as much anymore?
It's a big question.
A big question. And we've got some really interesting stuff to help us figure this out today.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got this potential podcast outline, all about why marriage is changing, and get this, a short story.
Ooh, a story.
Yeah. It's called Whispers of the Ocean.
Interesting. I'm always up for a good story.
Me too. So basically, we're going to do a deep dive into all the stuff, all the social stuff and, the economic stuff that's swirling around this marriage mystery.
Sounds good to me.
And then we'll see how that story, Whispers of the Ocean, fits in.
Yeah, like how it reflects those trends or maybe even challenges them.
Exactly. I love it. It's like we're going to be detectives, but for marriage.
I like that. Marriage detectives.
Okay, so let's start with that podcast outline. It lays out some pretty interesting ideas about why marriage is changing.
Yeah, for sure.
It talks about like changing gender roles, and money problems, even like being scared of divorce.
Right. All big factors.
Big factors.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up, gender roles. The outline mentions this sociologist, Kathleen Gerson.
Oh, yeah, I know her work.
She says that as women have gotten more, opportunities in their careers and stuff.
Right. More education, more chances to really succeed in the workplace.
Yeah, exactly. She says that's changed what they expect from marriage.
Totally. Like they're not necessarily looking for someone to just, support them financially anymore.
Right. It's not all about like bring home the bacon,
Exactly. They want a partner, a real partner who can share the load, both financially and emotionally.
So it's not just about the bacon anymore.
Yeah.
It's like who's doing the dishes too, right?
Absolutely. Who's doing the laundry? Who's taking care of the kids?
Yeah, all of it. But even with all that, the outline says money can still be a big problem when it comes to marriage.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's expensive.
Oh, yeah. I mean, weddings alone are crazy expensive these days.
I know, right?
The Pew Research Center did a study and found that 44% of single adults say they just, can't afford to get married.
44%.
Wow. It's a lot. Think about it. The average wedding now costs over $30,000.
$30,000. You practically need a loan just to say, I do.
It's ridiculous. And then you add in, housing costs.
Right, and student loans.
Oh, yeah. Student loan debt is a huge factor, too.
It's like a mountain of debt.
It is. So it's not surprising that a lot of people are, putting off marriage.
Like, hold on, let me pay off my student loans first, then maybe we'll talk about a ring.
Exactly.
Okay, so money's a problem. But the outline also mentions this other thing.
What's the
fear of divorce?
Oh, right. Yeah.
The divorce rates are pretty high.
Yeah, around 50%.
50%. So it's like a coin toss, almost.
It feels that way sometimes, right?
It does. So people might be thinking twice before jumping into marriage.
Yeah, it makes sense. They don't want to go through all the legal stuff and financial headaches of a divorce.
Totally, because it's not just about that, right?
No, it's not. There's a social aspect to it, too.
Right. Like back in the day, divorce was a big deal, like a huge failure.
Yeah, it was like a social stigma.
Totally. But now it's almost like it's more accepted,
Yeah, much more. It's seen as a personal choice, maybe even a sign of personal growth, like you're figuring out who you are.
It's like, okay, we tried, it didn't work out, let's move on.
Exactly. And this sociologist, Andrew Sherlin, he talks about the deinstitutionalization of marriage.
Deinstitutionalization.
Oh.
Okay, what does that even mean?
Basically, he's saying that marriage isn't seen as the only way to have a good life anymore.
Oh, I see. It's like you don't have to get married to be happy or successful or whatever.
Right. There are other paths now. So it's not that people don't believe in love or commitment. They're just figuring out what those things mean to them.
It's like maybe happily ever after doesn't always have to involve a wedding cake.
Exactly. And that's where I think this story, Whispers of the Ocean, comes in. It shows us how love can be different, how it can go against the usual norms.
Okay, hold on. Before we get to the love story.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of crazy that we're talking about marriage statistics and a love story all at the same time?
It is pretty cool.
I love it. It's what makes this show so interesting,
Yeah.
Connecting all these different ideas.
Absolutely. It's like we're looking at the big picture A&D, the personal stories, all at once.
Exactly. Okay, so tell me more about this Whispers of the Ocean story. What's it all about?
Well, on the surface, it's a love story. You've got Elena, she's a French journalist.
Ooh, French.
And Kofi, a Ghanaian fisherman.
Okay, a journalist and a fisherman. That's an interesting combo.
Right. They meet in this little village by the ocean and, like, totally fall for each other.
Oh, that's sweet. But
Mhm.
they're from totally different worlds, right?
Totally. Different backgrounds, different goals in life, everything.
Hmm. Sounds complicated. But you said it connects to what we're talking about, like the marriage trends and all that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It really shows those economic pressures we were talking about,
Hmm.
and that pull between wanting to do your own thing and what society expects.
Ooh, this is getting good. I can't wait to hear more about Elena and Kofi's story.
Well, you'll have to wait just a bit longer.
What? Come on.
We'll dive into their love story and see how it connects to all this in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay, fine, but you better be ready with all the juicy details next time.
I wouldn't dream of disappointing you.
Good, because this cliffhanger is killing me. See you in part 2.
See you there! So we're back, ready to dive into Whispers of the Ocean.
I'm ready. You left us hanging with this whole, like, journalist meets fisherman love story.
Right, Elena and Kofi.
Yeah.
And how it connects to all these, marriage trends we were talking about.
Yeah, that's what I'm dying to know. Like, are they swimming against the tide, or are they just going with the flow?
Well, remember all that stuff about financial pressures?
Yeah, like weddings are expensive, and people have student loans and stuff.
Exactly. Well, Whispers of the Ocean shows us that in a really powerful way.
Oh, how so?
Kofi, the fisherman, he's not just like this romantic dude on a boat.
Right. There's more to him than that.
Way more. He's the main breadwinner for his whole family back in Ghana.
Whoa, so it's not just him, it's a whole extended family.
Yep. And sending money back home is like a constant struggle for him.
Wow, so marriage is probably like the furthest thing from his mind?
Pretty much. He's living that statistic we talked about.
The 44% who can't afford to get married.
Exactly. But then you've got Elena, the journalist.
Right, the French journalist? What's her deal?
She's like the definition of an independent woman.
Okay, I like her already.
Right. She's successful. She travels the world for her job.
So settling down is probably not high on her list.
Not really. Marriage and kids and all that just wouldn't fit into her life right now.
So we've got Kofi, struggling to support his family, and Elena, who's, like, chasing her dreams.
Exactly. It's like they're both dealing with those same challenges that are making marriage less appealing for so many people.
Yeah, it's like reality is crashing into their love story.
Right. And the author does this really cool thing where she uses the ocean to, like, symbolize that.
Ooh, I love it when authors do that. Symbolism.
Right. There's this beautiful part where Elena talks about the ocean as this, like, vast, unpredictable expanse and how it reflects, the uncertainty of love.
Oh, wow, that's deep. So the ocean is like a metaphor for their relationship.
Totally. It's like the ocean represents freedom, but also, like, the risks of going your own way.
Right, because the ocean can be dangerous too. But here's the thing.
What's that?
They still fall for each other, even though it seems like doomed from the start.
Right. And that's what makes Whispers of the Ocean so powerful.
Yeah, it's like their love is defying all the odds.
Exactly. It's not just about fear or money or any of that.
It's like love is more powerful than all those things.
It seems that way, right? It challenges that whole idea that marriage is declining just because people are scared or can't afford it.
So it's more complicated than that.
Way more. And it reminds us that love can still be this, like, crazy, reckless force.
Even in a world where everyone's worried about, like, being practical and stuff.
Exactly. And you know what else the podcast outline talked about?
What's that?
This idea of individualism.
Individualism. Like, everyone wants to do their own special snowflake.
Well, kind of. It's more like we expect more from marriage now than, like, ever before.
Like, what kind of more?
Like, we want our partners to fulfill us emotionally, be our best friend, share our passions, all of that.
So it's not just about finding a husband or a wife anymore.
No, it's like we're looking for, like, our soulmate.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. No wonder people are scared of getting married.
I know, right? And Elena and Kofi, they represent that tension perfectly.
How so?
They both really value their own freedom and their dreams, but they also want that deep connection.
Right. It's like
Yeah.
they're being pulled in two different directions.
Exactly. So the big question is, what happens to them? Do they choose love or their dreams?
Ooh, the suspense.
Well, this is where things get, like, really interesting. Elena, she gets this amazing opportunity
What kind of opportunity?
to cover a huge news story, but it's in some far-off place.
So she'd have to leave Kofi.
Yeah, it would be hard for them to be together.
Oh, no. And what about Kofi?
His family in Ghana needs him more than ever.
It's like fate is keeping them apart.
Right, and there's this really emotional scene on the beach where they decide to say goodbye.
Oh, no, they break up.
They do, but it's not because they don't love each other.
Then why?
They realize that trying to make it work, trying to fit into that traditional marriage box would just make them both unhappy.
Wow, so they choose themselves.
In a way, yeah. They choose to honor their love by letting it go.
So does this mean, like, marriage is doomed?
That's the big question, isn't it? Does their story represent the future of love?
Right. Like, are we all going to be choosing ourselves over marriage?
Maybe, maybe not. That's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm hooked. What other possibilities are there?
We'll find out soon. But for now, just think about Elena and Kofi's choice. What does it tell us about love and commitment today?
All right, so we're back. We've been talking about all this stuff with marriage, like, is it changing? Is it dying?
Yeah, it's a big question. And we've looked at like the economic stuff and this idea of people wanting more freedom.
Right. And we talked about Elena and Kofi from that Whispers of the Ocean story.
Yeah, they chose their dreams over a traditional marriage.
A tough choice. So now the million-dollar question.
What's the future of marriage?
Well, exactly. Is it going to disappear
Yep.
or, like, transform into something totally new?
Well, our sources don't have all the answers.
Right, no crystal ball here.
But they do give us some interesting things to think about.
Okay, so what are some of the possibilities?
Well, one idea is that marriage, the way we think of it now, might become less important.
Less important, like people just won't care about it anymore.
Not necessarily that they won't care, but it might not be the, expected thing anymore.
Oh, I see. It's like right now, it's kind of like the default. Right, you grow up, you get married, you have kids.
Right. It's like the standard path.
But maybe that's changing.
Yeah, maybe. We're already seeing more couples living together without getting married.
Oh, yeah, cohabitation. I've heard of that.
Exactly. And then there's this other thing. It's called LA relationships.
LAT, what's that stand for?
It means living apart together.
Living apart together. What? So they're like a couple, but they live in different places.
Yeah, they're committed, but they choose to keep their own separate homes.
That's interesting. I guess it makes sense if people want more independence,
Right. And if their jobs or lives take them to different places.
Yeah, like if you're a journalist who travels the world.
Like Elena. But, okay, let's say people still want to get married.
Yeah, what about them?
Well, the institution of marriage might have to change, to adapt
Adapt to what?
to all these changes we've been talking about, like people wanting more freedom and individuality.
So marriage needs a makeover.
Maybe. The podcast outline mentions this legal scholar, Martha Feynman.
Okay.
She argues for, more flexible marriage contracts.
Flexible, like you can just write whatever you want in them.
Kind of. It's about tailoring the contract to the couple's specific needs.
So instead of it being like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly. It becomes more personalized.
I like that. So what kind of stuff could be in these flexible contracts?
All sorts of things, like how they'll handle money, who does what chores, even agreements about personal growth.
Whoa, agreements about personal growth. That's pretty intense.
Well, it's about making sure both partners feel supported in pursuing their dreams,
So it's like, I promise to support your crazy dream of becoming a underwater basket weaver, and you promise to support mine.
Something like that. The idea is that these contracts could lead to stronger marriages.
Stronger. How so?
Well, because they're based on, clear communication and mutual respect,
Right. It's like laying everything out on the table from the start.
Exactly. But of course, some people will say, well, what's the point of marriage then?
Yeah, if it's so customizable, is it even marriage anymore?
That's a good question. And this is where I think Whispers of the Ocean gives us something important to think about.
Okay. How so?
Elena and Kofi, they show us that even if marriage changes or disappears altogether,
Yeah.
people will always crave connection,
They still want love.
Exactly. Their love was real. It was powerful, even though it didn't lead to marriage.
Right. It was about that deep connection they had, even if it was temporary.
Exactly. And that's the key, right? Whether you get married or not, it's about approaching relationships with honesty and being willing to grow together.
So maybe all these changes with marriage aren't a bad thing.
Maybe not. Maybe it's just a sign that we're redefining what love and commitment look like.
Because we're figuring out how to make relationships work in this crazy modern world.
Exactly. And that's something to be hopeful about, right?
Yeah, it is. So listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about.
Yeah.
What does love and commitment mean to you? And how can you build relationships that, really reflect who you are and what you want? It's something to ponder.
It is. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. It's been a great conversation.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into, well, who knows what?